Hello everyone and welcome back to another album review, and in this video I'm going to review The Long Defeat by Deathspell Omega. Deathspell Omega is possibly one of the most influential and one of the most innovative black metal groups of the past 20 years. Over the years they have managed to create some albums that are considered essential in the black metal scene, with some of them really managing to reinvent the wheel and just create something different. Their albums might not be easy to digest as they have some really weird structures to them. Their albums can go from directions of like progressive black metal and avant-garde black metal, but even if their sound might not be the easiest to follow, the importance of some of the albums they've made and how important they are to the scene can certainly not go unnoticed. Now, The Long Defeat seems to mark a new era for Deathspell Omega. This is an album with 5 very lengthy tracks, and it seems that in this one they end up taking some risks and actually creating a quite different album compared to basically anything else they've put out before. Now, the band has obviously experimented with many other directions before, and even some of their latest stuff seem to sort of try to mark a new era. Their previous album, The Furnaces of Pergenesia, shared a lot of elements that would appeal to Deathspell Omega fans, but it was certainly a kinda unique album for the band. Now, the experimentations that they took with this album and the changes of directions were not really that much of my thing. I didn't manage to get that much into this album. I can definitely see the appeal though. With the case of The Long Defeat though seems to be a bit different, as it seems like a completely different album compared to basically anything else they've done. This one in a sense seems sort of unrecognizable for the band. You definitely get some elements that you would expect with the structures and the progressive elements, however, it doesn't really feel like a Deathspell Omega album, and I feel that this makes the album quite interesting. However, I get it why there are mixed opinions about this album, as for some of the veteran fans of Deathspell Omega, this might be slightly off-putting. Some of it might have to do with the melodic aspects of this album, as in times it can sound slightly more accessible with the production and with some of the more simplistic and atmospheric structures, which is something that we sort of get with the beginning of the first song, which in my opinion sounds absolutely beautiful, and it's actually a really good way to start a song. It's this lengthy instrumental portion towards the beginning, which in my opinion structurally and melodically it sounds pretty cool, but the thing that sounds the most off-putting right off the get-go is the vocals. Now, it seems that Deathspell Omega have taken a bit of a different direction when it comes to the vocals of this album. First of all, it seems that there is a different session vocalist for this album, or as it's rumored, more session vocalists. Now, right off the bat, the vocals are by far the weirdest aspect out of this album. They can sound pretty off-putting as they're this bizarre sort of spoken word vocals with so many different layers and effects attached to them that I think it can definitely not appeal to everyone. But in my opinion, this is actually one of the strongest points about this album, because the thing is that when it comes to the vocals, I never particularly loved the vocals out of the Deathspell Omega albums. When I think of Deathspell Omega and what is it that stands out to them, the vocals is definitely not one of the first things that comes to mind, but it changes with this album. Now, you might say that this is for its benefit or that it's the worst thing about this album. Now, I personally really liked the risks that they took with the vocals on this album. They go into many different directions and styles. They have so many moments where the vocals sound completely different, and not only are the deliveries quite surprising, but for the most part I think that they work pretty well with what the instrumentals do. I really think that the vocals being so out there and so off-putting works to its benefit, because for me at least it marks as one of the very first moments in the Deathspell Omega catalog where the vocals really managed to stand out. So whether you're a fan of the vocals or not, you cannot deny that they managed to stand out in this album at least. And when it comes to the very first song, I also think that it's wonderfully structured. This is a massive 12-minute song and there is a lot going on to it. From the very first melodic aspect of the instrumental that sounds awesome, to the introduction of the vocals that really set the tone for something completely different, to then some quite intense and chaotic portions towards the second half, and a very intriguing and bizarre finisher with all sort of epic tribal sections, but with a few distortion sounds attached to it as well. So this very first track instantly manages to create a strong impression on you. Whether it's positive or negative, It is a track that really manages to stand out, as it's quite bizarre, even for Deathspell Omega standards. Now, the second track in my opinion contains some of the best riffs out of this entire album. Some of the riffs over here sound insanely good, and I like some of the more atmospheric aspects that you get with some of the elements of this song as well, but you also have those really fierce and brutal blast beats that sound amazing over here. Actually, I would say that these are some of the best sounding blast beats that I've heard in a long time. The production on the drums on this track in particular sounds so crisp, it's so crystal clear, it's actually quite impressive. I really liked what they did with this track in terms of its production, and especially how sonically pristine the drums sound in this track in particular, in my opinion. The Long Defeat is the only track that I didn't particularly enjoy as much. I'd say that this is possibly the closest we get on what Deathspell Omega did with their previous album, which goes into these more slow and simplistic directions. And I'd say there are some really cool elements about this song, but it was definitely the one that I cared for the least. I like some of the blast beats towards the second half, though in my opinion they don't have the intensity or clarity of the previous song. The final 2 or so minutes of the track were excellent though. The thing is though that this final portion feels quite separated from the rest of the song. It feels like a completely different song, a new idea going in its own path. And I like this idea in particular. I really like the riff out of this one and the atmosphere behind it. I feel that it's a pretty solid finisher. The fourth track is possibly the most chaotic moment over here. The very first minute starts pretty insane. It has some quite bizarre structures to it and some really punishing blast beats. It sounds brutal. I'd say that the solo portions out of the track don't really work that greatly in my opinion. It is possibly the one thing that I didn't particularly enjoy that much out of the new Deathspell Omega album is those guitar solos that in my opinion feel slightly out of place. Now I can give credit to the track being kinda weird, especially with the vocals. Once again, I think that they stand out in this song as well, but I can't really say that it holds up as a song all the way through. Still some pretty nice ideas to it overall. Finally, we have the track Our Life Is Your Death over here, which is a kind of weird one because it sounds pretty accessible at times, and especially this one doesn't really feel like you're listening to a Deathspell Omega song. Like the structures, the melodies, the overall feel of the song might come closer to something out of like a post-black group. I might be completely off on this, but I honestly feel that some of the riffs over here slightly reminded me of some of the stuff Orange Pazuzu would do. Now, I personally believe that this track is pretty good, one of the best moments over here, especially when it comes to the main riff towards the beginning. It is excellent. It contains some really good moments over here. I like the production, I like the atmosphere, and overall I like the risks that this track takes. Which at the end of the day I'd say that this is the thing that appeals for the whole album for me. This for me has already ended up being one of the best albums that I've heard from Deathspell Omega. This might certainly not be one of the most innovative albums they've done, that's for sure, but it's definitely one of the most unique ones in their catalog, and I am personally looking forward to more stuff like this from the band in the future. I'm gonna give The Long Defeat a 7+ out of 10. What's your opinion on this album? Like it, dislike it, why, and what do you want me to review next time? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.